I was introduced with a few hats: PFLAG, GG Pride, Community Development Worker, and part of my role as a Community Development Worker, which we'll get into, is building the capacity and upskilling others within our community to have a lot of hats as well, or to take some of my hats, to share the load, the workload for the LGBTI community. And the introduction said I preside over Goulburn Valley Pride. I used to do that, but now one of our young leaders over here, Georgie, not only runs our youth group, but is now the president of the local gay and lesbian group as well. So that, I just want to make that correction. She's very precious about that role, and she does such an amazing job under PR officer now. So give her a round of applause. She's awesome. And my colleague here, Anna, she's the youth worker for the project, and she'll tell you all about what she does too. So very quickly, just an introduction to Kildonan, because it might be a new name for you all. Cutting Edge Youth Services, Uniting Care Cutting Edge, that's what we've been historically known as across the region. Last year in August, we merged with Kildonan Uniting Care. They're a Melbourne-based Uniting Care organisation. That was really great for us. It kind of opened up the Hume corridor between Epping and our office in Shepparton, right up to Goulburn. And so we still now service, well, our focus up here in Shepparton and in Moira is looking after about 20 different programs for different groups of youth who are vulnerable, isolated, at risk, including Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, young people with disabilities, refugees, and the area that the three of us work on, which is same-sex attracted, sex and gender diverse youth. For the last 15 years in the region, we've been doing this type of work in some capacity, which has been fantastic. And for the last 5 years, we've been funded at $200,000 per year, which is pretty awesome, from the Department of Health, and now from the HAY funding, which is the Healthy Equal Youth funding. And that $200,000 a year has provided us with huge capacity and resources to do really wonderful things right across Greater Shepparton, and that's within an hour of Shepparton, right out to Echuca Way, down through Kyabram, right down as far as Seymour and Broadford in some cases, so a bit further south. And then right up back through Cobram and Benalla. So we look after a lot of young people. I support a lot of schools in a lot of regions. I just want to quickly give you a statistic, which is that approximately somewhere between 9 and 11% or 10% of young people, when surveyed, identify as having feelings of same-sex attraction. So when we go into schools and we're working with students, our focus isn't just on that 10% though. And the work I do, which I'll tell you about in a minute as a community development worker, is far more about looking after the whole group of students and the teachers that are supporting those students, but with a focus on those young people who are often at risk or vulnerable, and we'll talk to you about that in a minute. The first component, though, of the project, I'm going to hand over to Anna, and she's going to tell you about what she does, so please make Anna welcome.
Thank you very much. Hopefully you can all hear me right now. My name is Anna. Thank you for the introduction, Damien. I am the youth worker for the Diversity Project. I've only been in this role for about 6 months, so I'm still relatively new to the position, and I feel like I learn new things every day. Basically, what I do is I work one-on-one with young people between the ages of 12 and 25 who identify as same-sex attracted, sex and gender diverse. So basically I do intensive case management, so I do speak to them one-on-one, a bit of counseling is involved, and it's just to make sure that they feel respected, accepted, and just overall feel supported, because there is a lack of support for LGBTI young people in our area, and that's, I think basically that's it. And the second component of the Diversity Project is the Community Development Worker, and that is Damien's role, so I will pass that on to you, Damien.
Thank you. So just very quickly, what I do more broadly in my role, Anna and I work in both community settings and within schools. I'm probably in schools a little bit more than Anna, and for example, up there you'll see that part of my work is going out into organisations like Primary Care Connect or Headspace, and even Greater Shepparton City Council's children's services, departments like that, providing inclusive practice training, so really enhancing the capacity for organisations across our region to be better dealing with, as we might call, rainbow families, you know, same-sex parented families, or single parents who might have, you know, gender diverse children, you know, boys not wanting to wear blue, girls not wanting to wear pink, all that kind of inclusive practice training, as well as doing that at schools, you know, with students. A lot of the sexuality education that we do is in most government schools across Greater Shepparton, Numurkah, Nathalia, Mooroopna, and we're now welcomed into those schools. We've built a good reputation with them over the last few years, being fully funded, and we're able to provide that inclusive training and sexuality education, which we'll tell you about in a minute. An extension of that role too that Anna and Georgie are involved in historically is about helping those schools, in cases where they want them, to actually set up what is known as gay-straight alliances. So groups of students within the schools who might be setting up their own diversity groups. So once a week during a lunchtime, 20 students might meet who have a real focus on eradicating not only homophobia and biphobia and transphobia in most instances, but sometimes racism and other discrimination that happens in their schools. So it's quite broad, or can be quite narrow and just the LGBTI stuff in some schools. So that's what I do. More broadly than that, you know, we have lots of other groups and festivals in and across Greater Shepparton now that have been established also, which we'll talk about a bit later. It's quite broad. You might see my face on the TV, in the newspapers, always trying to raise that awareness and help Greater Shepparton become a more inclusive community for our LGBTI community and friends. I'm going to ask Georgie to step up, because alongside the youth work that Anna does and the community development work that I do, Georgie over here runs a very successful youth group that's been running also for about 15 years in Shepparton, fortnight after fortnight. So tell us a bit about that, Georgie.
Thank you, Damien. My name's Georgie, as Damien said before. I'm the volunteer youth leader for the diversity group, which meets fortnightly, usually on a Monday night for 3 hours. So basically, diversity group is youth-led and meets twice a month for social and support activities. Together, we cook dinner. Often we try to cook something that the young people might not know how to cook, or that they might want to learn skills in cooking. And then we eat together. Over dinner, we always try to have a positive kind of conversation. Often it can be around areas like sexual health, or it could be around an issue that's, you know, one of the young people are facing. The positive conversations are a really good way for the young people to feel as though they're being heard and that their voice is being listened to. So dinner is always a time of sharing and reflection. We often then have a guest speaker that'll come in for the second portion of the evening. So we've had a couple of ladies that are here today that have come before. Damien's also been our guest speaker one night. I had a friend, Kieran, who gave us a little bit of a history. So the guest speaker is really good for coming and giving information to the young people. That way they can have a chance to learn new things, or to ask questions, or to feel as though their ideas and their voice is being listened to. Sorry, I've lost my spot. Sometimes we branch out a little bit and we do things that are a little bit more creative or visual. In a couple of weeks' time, we'll be having somebody that's coming and doing some creative work with us, which is a really good way of branching out, because different young people have different skill sets and there's always different ways of learning. I often try to ensure that what we cover is what the young people want and what they also need. Sometimes, like Anna or Damien and I will have conversations about what we think that the group would need, but we always put the onus back on the young people, because at the end of the day, the group is, you know, they are the young people, it's their group, and we always want their voices to be heard. So it's a really good way. And I think working with Damien and the Diversity Project, the diversity group works really well within the community. We often have many young people that come from schools, like we had an open day last week, like last meeting when we had diversity last Monday, which was a really good way. We had a couple of new people come along. So it's always a good opportunity for someone. And I've also, Damien's put the brochures on all of your tables, so that's there. So if you know anybody that might need a little bit of social or support outside of the network that they already have, get in touch with one of us and encourage them to come along.
Thanks, Georgie. So as per that brochure, the group is for young people between the ages of 12 and 25. It is a safe, confidential space, and young people volunteer to come along. We don't have to, entice them, other than free food, of course, and the guest speakers they want. It's a really safe, wonderful space for young people to engage. So regarding the sex ed, or the sexuality education that we're doing and providing young people in schools, I'll talk about in a minute, but we also do that in the community setting. So Georgie did mention a couple of the guest speakers that have come along to the group. We've had other speakers such as community sexual health nurses. We've had our local gay and lesbian liaison officer from the Victoria Police come along and chat to our young people. We've had the local general practitioner, Alan Wallace, who deals with men's sexual health and gay men's health and HIV. Over the last 15 years, we've had lots and lots of really great guest speakers, coming along and talking about discrimination and law. So really giving young people those resources and skills, including resilience. And like Georgie said, the group's youth-led and driven. So what they want, they get. I think they had a psychic come along once for a bit of fun as well. So it's all about them, which is great. The other thing we give them access to is creative art projects. Georgie said she has a guest speaker in a couple of weeks doing art. And one such project, you would have seen the picture on the previous page down the bottom left here, was called the Think About It project. And 10 or 11 young people were invited to share their stories. And so on this DVD, which among a few other resources we might put on and show you during lunchtime, young people have had the opportunity to share their stories. So looking at the Riddle scale, for those who don't know what the Riddle scale is, it's a scale of homophobia, starting with negative attitudes out in our community, right down one end like repulsion or pity for gay and lesbian people, right up to the other end of the scale, looking at nurturing and celebrating gay and lesbian people. So young people taking us on a journey about what that might feel like or has been like for them. So that's a really powerful DVD. Just one of the types of projects we really engage our young people in, and that they lead themselves. And George will talk a bit more later about some other things like a festival that our young people have driven and led. And the other area is mentoring and peer support. So not only do we have the wonderful diversity group, but we do work with and partner with people like the Youth Affairs Council of Victoria, encourage them to come up to regional and rural areas, put a particular focus on sexuality, healthy relationships, and we're part of statewide networks. So actually take our minibus to places with the young people. Coming up on 17th of May, for example, which is Idaho International Day Against Homophobia. Over in Yarra Glen, we're going to get all the young people on our minibus and go over to Yarra Glen. They've got a VFL, I think it is, Pride Round. So the 50-metre lines are being painted rainbow, and to eradicate homophobia from sport, they're having a Pride Round, over in the Yarra Glen. So we do try, because our young people are in regional areas, to help them get transport around the region, to get involved in other communities and other great initiatives to make them feel good. So the things that we do other than that include things like...
Well, in my role, I do co-locations, and one of the places where I co-locate is Headspace. So I am there once a week for about 3 hours, and I meet with young people who identify as LGBTI and offer support and counselling.
And what else, Georgie?
So we often have camps that are run by statewide networks, and there's many other GLBTI like youth-led groups across the state. There's one in Albury Wodonga, there's a couple in Ballarat, Geelong, Bendigo, lots of places across the state. Last year in August we went to a camp which was in Echuca, which was a really good opportunity for the young people to meet their peers, like people that they might have only spoken to on Facebook, which I guess is okay, but meeting them in person is a really great way to make new connections and new friends. So we often have camps or activities like that. Sometimes we try to make sure that we can facilitate for them to go to other places in the state with our little minibus. We go on little journeys to places, so that's a great thing too.
Thanks, Georgie. Just hearing you say that, being a gay man myself, happy to share that information with you, and having gone through, I'm 35 years old now, but having gone through 13 years of Catholic education in a boys' school for my secondary education and a primary school, a Catholic co-ed school for primary. All of us have been bullied at some time and been made to feel different, but I don't think I can convey to you the feelings, really, of isolation and, just the thoughts, of low self-esteem and all of that someone can feel when they are going through something as scary as coming out. Why am I mentioning that? I can't even remember now. I'm mentioning that because
people the same. Face to face.
Yeah, okay, that's right. So when you feel like you're isolated, you're in a community on your own, and you get an opportunity to meet someone else, it can be a really powerful, positive feeling. And you know, when you do feel affirmed, when you do feel celebrated, when you do feel a part of a group or part of a community, you would all know that that feels really amazing. So it's great to be offering those opportunities to our young people. The school-based sexuality education and resources, or the Taking Care of Me program that you would have heard mentioned in the introduction, is an initiative that is done in many Shepparton-based schools, and you'll see a huge poster over there on the wall. It's a big green one with a couple of pictures on there. One of the pictures looks like this. It's the genderbread person, and so often when I go into schools, sometimes I can have as little as 7 minutes with students, sincerely, but wonderfully enough, on the other end of that scale, sometimes I can have as many as 90 minutes with students. And often I try to cram the same content in. No, I don't. I wish I could, because there is so much information to give to young people, and this is one visual tool that we use very, very much, that I'm very quickly just going to talk you through. I think often, you know, we have great resources in catching on early, but sometimes there are just some really great resources in addition to that I've found that as a community organisation and a community worker, I can add on and give value adding to school. So I start talking to our Year 9s and Year 10s about, you know, I start here actually, because I think the blue and purple line, our bits, because we can see them, are the easiest place to start. And we talk about how generally, you know, you're either born as a male or female when you pop out, and one or the other is generally what happens. But uncommonly, you know, once in every 2,000 or so babies, we have a baby born with intersex traits. And I start to explain that to them, and explain that, you know, it may be your chromosomes aren't exclusively XX or XY, or, you know, you might have body parts that don't necessarily represent one sex down below. And so we very quickly attach the word sex to our organs and our bits, because later when we start talking about gender, it can get a bit confusing. I then go down to this red line. We start talking about the heart and our feelings and who we're attracted to. I do engage them, and so I get them to tell me what heterosexual means, what bisexual means, and what homosexual means, and tell them I hate that word. I much prefer the word gay or something a little less clinical. And explain to them then that, you know, all of these words here under Australian law are affirmed and allowed and should be celebrated because they're all part of our unique identity, but they're labels that we should be putting on ourselves and not casting upon other people, or certainly using to bully. And when we do use these words to bully, it's more like your homo, your fence sitter, you know, your straighty. For those who do know, people do pick on people for being straight too. And you know, and they're just horrible words, and they're never in a positive way. So we reframe that for them, and I certainly don't ask them to identify themselves, but invite them to take this genderbread person away with them and use it to actually work out where on the scales they feel they fit, and to acknowledge that there's no boxes up here, and none of us should be ticking boxes and fitting into one place, or be bullied to fit into one place. And then talk about how, you know, if you see two football players, you know, on the football field, and they kick a goal and they're, you know, excited and hugging and kissing each other, and then go into the hot steamy change rooms and they're flicking each other with towels, I ask them if that, you know, if those men are gay. And more often than not, they say, well, no. And so we kind of talk about how what we see, because we feel uncomfortable about that, can often be why we start, you know, bullying people or putting people into boxes. And that our orientation and our sex are all about us identifying where we fit. Then going into gender expression, we show a really great video around masculinity and femininity and what that means, and how that even that little person behind the counter at Gloria Jeans or Macca's who has really short hair and really fine features, and you really can't tell if they're a girl or a boy, and then you look for their name tag and it's Cody, and then you still can't tell whether it's a boy or a girl. Does it really matter? You know, you're just ordering your fries or your coffee. So these are the real conversations we're having that aren't even yet at all linked to any sex. You know, so many people think that when we want to talk about sexuality, especially the homosexuality, we're actually going to start talking about what we're doing in the bedroom. And that's where a lot of the fear comes from a lot of the teachers or principals I've spoken to in the last 15 years. They just think the whole gay thing's too hard, and it actually really isn't. It's really, really easy. And so we acknowledge then that, you know, you don't have to be a feminine girl or a girly girl to express yourself, similar with guys having to fit a Shane Warne image to be an Aussie bloke. And then we go into the gender identity part, so how we feel in our brain. And I'm not trans myself, you know, I identify, I happily tell them here that I'm a gay man, been in my relationship 7 years, but I'm right up this end of the scale, that you can get, you know, your chromosomes tested, and I have, because it's good to be able to stand up here and show you where I fit, and I tell them I'm male, and, you know, I tell them that I'm probably somewhere around about here. You know, I don't think I'm feminine, but I don't think I'm masculine, you know, like macho, I've got an earring, you know, I don't really wear blundstones and flannelette. You know, because they're the kind of things we think of when we start stereotyping and generalising, and then tell them that I don't actually like the word man. You know, the word man really isn't comfortable for me either, and that, you know, I would prefer, I'd say I'm a guy or I'm a male, and I prefer, you know, pronouns like he and him, but just that man really doesn't quite identify in my head my gender identity. And it's the best way I can explain it to them, because they often see what they describe as a woman in a dress, sitting on a couch with Oprah, with an Adam's apple, and they just don't get that. And I'm like, well, you know what, you don't necessarily have to get that, but what I encourage you to do as you move forward into adulthood is having those conversations, being respectful, understanding that young people will be expressing themselves in different ways. In many cases androgynously, in some cases, you know, quite femininely, and it might be very much not what you're expecting. That pronouns of he or she might be, you know, referred to differently. People might be wanting you to call them they or z or a, all types of different things that I don't think was ever part or even thought of in my sexuality education in schools. Just things that I think are really important. And great videos, good positive images of young people doing really great things. It's really important stuff.
So our diversity group has a private Facebook group, which is really helpful for our young people. Am I on the right page? Yeah, good. Sorry, I can't see that well. So basically, the private Facebook group, the admins is Damien and myself, so you have to be added by one of us, so it can't be accessed by anybody in the public, which is really helpful because a lot of our young people can't necessarily come out to their family or friends. They often come to diversity under the heading of something else, and if that's, you know, what they have to do, then that's okay with us. So we want to provide them with a safe space where they can talk amongst their friends and other people that come to diversity, where they can find out information. Damien and Anna and I often post things that are happening in the community, information, links to websites, lots of different things that can help them. So a young person that is part of the diversity group that comes on a regular basis, or even some young people that are seeking help from Anna or Damien through the diversity project, are all included in the group. So it's a really good way of communication for young people, especially because everybody that I know has a smartphone, has access to Facebook, so it's pretty good. We have this amazing festival that's now in the Greater Shepparton region called Out in the Open, which celebrates community diversity, and I'm going to refer to my notes because I wrote something down. The Out in the Open Festival celebrates community diversity in the Greater Shepparton region. The festival was inspired by the young people and the changes that they wanted to be a part of in their community. The festival continues to provide opportunity for inclusion and growth, where young people can run their own events and take action within their community. So the festival this year will be held at the start of November, and as the diversity youth leader, diversity will be putting on like a stall, or they'll host an event or something. The young people love the festival. It's really good to be able to offer a festival like its kind in Shepparton, because the only other two well-known ones is one happens in Dalesford and one happens in Melbourne. So it's really good to be able to offer something in the regional area. And it's amazing for the young people. They always feel inspired and they always want to help out. Basically all of them that are part of the group will often volunteer as well.
So if you're still not yet convinced that we're very wisely spending our $200,000 a year on all of the things that we're doing, in addition to that, you know, we also want to make this sustainable. And so it's not, you know, just in case the funding does run out, which it is in June 2015, just saying. We offer opportunities for our young people to get involved in mental health first aid training so they can be peer support for others in their community. You might have heard mentioned the PFLAG group, which is parents and friends of lesbian and gay people. So other leaders and parents and role models within the community can be supporting not only their young people as they come out, but often each other. I know that, you know, when I started thinking about my sexuality at the age of 13 and didn't come out until I was 18, I kind of had 5 years to get used to being gay. and then I kind of expected that when I told mum and dad that they'd be fine with it, you know, in a couple of days' time. They have their own coming out process, you know, so parents can often need some support around that. And Goulburn Valley Pride, which George, you mentioned, a great social group, you know, fortnightly coffees, dinners, movies, you know, and participating in other social events, but also, you know, offering opportunities. Goulburn Valley Pride does, you know, for scholarships. So if there are young people or community members that, you know, may not be able to afford something, the larger LGBTI older community are there offering, you know, to make tax-deductible donations and to support our young people. So it is about long-term sustainability, you know, but still hopefully getting some funding to do the core business, which has to be about educating our young people, going into the schools and providing that safe youth group space, which Kildonan Uniting Care has committed to either way, funding or not, you know, within their framework and values, you know, finding $10,000 a year to be able to keep that group going. So that's a really important thing. So just last thing really, this is in summary, there's a strong focus and sense of pride in what we do. And supporting same-sex attracted, sex and gender diverse young people is a really important thing, as is their allies, friends and supporters. And I just want to say again that, you know, in a school of 1,200 where I was yesterday at Wanganui Park doing sexuality education, you're looking at, based on research, 120 to 130 students that this work is going to be directly impacting. But if the other 1,000 students are running around still using language like that's so gay and being abusive and homophobic, it really isn't supporting the other 120 to 130 students, and it's why my focus isn't just on the young queer kids, it's on, you know, everybody in the school, including the teachers and the principals. There's a focus on all staff receiving that inclusive practice training. You'll see there, point 2, it isn't just about, you know, in organisations or schools, training the school nurses or training the intake workers in community organisations. It's about giving everybody that inclusive practice training and making sure that it's not token inclusion, you know. So it's great to have, you know, signs on the toilets that show gender neutrality, or to have intake forms that ask you to write whether you're female or male, rather than having to tick a box for male or female. Having posters and rainbow stickers, they're all great things, but if your policies aren't around inclusion and you don't have a genuine commitment to diversity, you're not going to be providing that safe, inclusive space. And last but not least, the sustainability of the youth group that Georgie runs. Georgie's turning 26 years old in how long? 2 months' time, which means she is outside the age group, which is 12 to 25. She's deeply sad about that, but is excited about training up our young people to take on that role and embracing her other roles in the community, so that's a good thing. All right, Anna.
So service integration and flexibility, that can mean several things. This can mean that a school counsellor rings me up and says, look, I have a young student here who identifies as gay and is having trouble at home. Can you come in and talk to them? It can also mean, for the moment, the majority of my clients identify as transgender. And for most of them, this means beginning the transitioning process, and that's quite an arduous process. It starts with seeing a GP, who can then refer them on to the gender dysphoria clinic in Melbourne. This means doctor's appointments, this means trips to Melbourne, so we have to be flexible in that aspect.
So youth input and leadership. So diversity is one of many groups that are youth-led across the Shepparton region. There's a reference group at Headspace, there's Word and Mouth, which is run by the council, there's a group at The Bridge, there's other youth groups that are part of church organisations. So I think it's really good because we can partner with them with specific things like the Out in the Open Festival to be able to offer a broad range of things. So being able to be a part of like the diversity community is great, but being able to partner with another organisation as well is really important. So I think that's great that the Diversity Project through Kildonan has the opportunity to do that, and hopefully we can continue to do that whether we have funding or not. Most of us will still be around anyway.
Thanks, Georgie. So in conclusion, we have developed very strong, that second dot point there, partnerships and a position and a reputation within our community of doing really great work with same-sex attracted, sex and gender diverse people over the last 15 years. And we certainly hope that we can continue doing that in some capacity, whether it is as volunteers or as paid staff. I know I'll still be doing the work somehow, some way. So please get in touch with us if you do want some more information. Our details are up there. Thanks.